well, we're protected in Jesus. We don't, it's almost like we don't need the armor or the authority. We don't need to go into that because we're protected. That's not what the Scriptures teach.
Well, right. Isn't that would just be the ultimate, and I would call that the ultimate assumption. And obviously, the cliche of what the first three letters spell in that word. But I think the thing is that it's just like we're trying to teach people to prepare for the difficult times that are coming and say, well, I'm just going to trust Jesus. I can tell you this, 99% of the people that have said that to me in 36 years of being saved by the blood of the Lamb, 98.9% of those people don't practice what they preach in that profession. Jesse Penn Lewis, you mentioned something earlier. Jesse Penn Lewis said the most dangerous point for any Christian is to become passive. And isn't that what hypnosis does? It puts you into such a state of passive, natural, God-given, God-created defenses that other personalities can usurp the authority that you are supposed to have over your own life.
Glad you mentioned Jesse Penn, because that book, War on the Saints, does bring a crucial thing that needs to be brought up again, the passivity. Whether it's Hinduism, Buddhism, when I was, before I wasn't raised in any church, and I was into deep, occultism, and I was into the temple, this one temple, Buddhist temple, into Golden Buddha, and the master kept telling us we had to go passive. That's what happens among remote viewers now, New Agers, all across the board, the passivity. Even this man called Dan Sherman had said that he worked for the National Security Agency. I don't know if you read about him, in some kind of machinery they developed where he was to be connected to receive messages from some kind of extra-dimensional presence, but he wasn't allowed to be, he had to completely go passive. He couldn't question it, he couldn't be critical, he couldn't ask it even questions. It was just, he had to be the recipient and be willing to let it come in. That's part of what programming, splitting a personality, a human's will, it literally brings them to 0 point, into that passivity to where they can impose the programming that the demonic presence then can literally just, saturate itself in.
Right, set up shop. Yeah, set up shop. Isn't it interesting, because yearly sensory deprivation tanks, etc., were designed to put people into that state so that they could be absolutely programmed with no inhibitions and no form of natural resistance. So, let me ask you this. Have you had any contemporary word from the Lord on why the switch over to HDTV? And this is critical, because it's my contention that they're going to have to put us into an electromagnetic passive flux in order for the entities that are going to be released, to have their full authority to just slaughter mercilessly. Have you given any thought about that?
Here's the thought I've given to that. People have asked me over the years, Russ, because we've dealt with local individuals where we learned the trigger, or another personality inside gave us the trigger, and we spoke it. We did this in learning. We were learning this along the way. And all of a sudden, boom, this personality comes up, what are you doing? We're not even supposed to be here. We're not supposed to know these secrets, all this kind of stuff. Now, we've learned what triggers are. They can come on over the phone, just simply tones. They can be sent, just like a dog that can hear a sound and we can't. They also have this ability, and especially the phone. Not just tones, but when we used to hear this little blip of a sound when we did some surveillance. What it was a microburst, speeded up language in either Chinese or in like Spanish, some other language that was like a microburst that a sub-personality could pick up and literally kind of download it, listen to it, know what it said. We just thought it was a blip on the phone. Now, when you say this TV thing, yeah, I kept questioning why. We're all demanded to move to this. In some of those military ones we've gone over the years, we've spent thousands of hours in discussions at lakesides, in buildings, in secret places where they wanted to meet, scary places, where we had to bring people with weapons, because we were concerned at that time, back in those days anyway. And we heard them, they talked to us about, I'd ask them, how are they going to release, tens of thousands of you all at one time in this Black Awakening thing, this chaos? And they looked at me and smiled. It's two things. It's a spiritual release demonic presence that literally awakens the sleepers within. But they said, Russ, just simply, tones, the concept of tones. If we have something nationwide that can put out, a particular sound or a set of sounds or a code that all of these individuals are coded by, that's all it's going to take to wake up thousands of them at one time.
Or Gwen towers with subsonic or infrasonic programming keys.
Sure.
I think, Russ, this is critical, okay, because look at the compression of time. See, I think you just gave everybody the answer, and I can't tell you how much emails, or how many emails I'm getting from people really worried about the AC. What if that is the technology for an infrasound, okay, or a carrier signal or a carrier wave? And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Russ quoted the scripture where Jesus would build his church and the gates of hell would not prevail against it. Interestingly enough, one of the ways the gates are activated are with sound. I do not know the sounds. I don't know, that I was never told that, but the point is that sound is the way it's activated. So is it then feasible, Russ, that with the lateness of the hour, and they almost panic like, hey, we'll pay you to do this, that will be, if you will, the carrier trigger to unloose all of these entities?
Yeah, it can be. And I want to say this, it would be a mix of, because they believe, whether we believe this or not, they clearly believe they can, just like they can conjure a demonic presence and put it on an object, give it to an individual to where that presence begins to affect them, like toxic waste almost, because that presence has gotten into their room or into their home or into their church. They love doing this kind of thing. Well, now carry this over to technology. I have no question that some technology that we have has been given by extra-dimensional presence. Where do ideas come from? In a scientist, in a lab worker, in a military lab worker, in technicians, they get ideas in their heads. Some of them wake up with dreams that come in their head, and they figure something out, and they begin to build their piece of technology. I'm convinced, I am utterly convinced, just like those arrows in Ephesians 6 where they're sent into, in against Christians. We understand that as Christians. Involuntary thoughts, thrust into our heads, communicating to us, oh, God doesn't love you, God, you're not going to do good, you're weak, all those lies that come in. I believe the same thing can occur in a person who does not have the Spirit of God, or that might even be open to New Age alternative spirituality, that involuntary thoughts, ideas concerning technology that eventually becomes, well, it's all moving global. So I have to look at this and say, I wonder whether there's a connection, where there's demonic, where they know how to put demonic presence in and upon this that will be attached to that carrier wave. Well,
the battle is, how should I say this, increasing at a magnitude that is just unimaginable. Would you touch on, too, you do a series on the abyss, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I'll have Russ on next week if it's okay with you, Russ. I'm not trying to, commit you to it, but there's so much stuff. But just talk briefly from your understanding about what happens when the abyss is opened up.
Sure, and I've had a number of these individuals that they can't wait for it to be opened up. They're looking forward to it.
Absolutely, but you're getting supernatural testimony from the denizens of hell themselves that the abyss is ready to open. There's an agitation. Is that a good word?
There's definitely agitation. What I've said on this series is the abyss is not the problem. What comes out of the abyss is the problem.
Absolutely.
And the key, you and I know that the idea of a key is they've gotten the right, the authority. Somehow, whether, again, just like Satan, Satan got the authority to come into the world. It's the Greek word exousia, meaning a temporal but given authority. Satan said it to Jesus, it's been given to me to get, when he was offering all the kingdoms of the world. So the dark side obtains the right to open this place. I believe, even if it's under the earth, I still believe it's dimensional, but inseparably connected to the physical world. It's just a gateway away. Obviously, it's a gateway, and when it is opened, it's something that's going to affect the globe. The globe is going to know. Now we're moving to global events. All of this will be global. from the time of the